All right, guys, welcome back to The Way. Today we're going to start up the Galatians series, or continue the Galatians series in Galatians 1. JT, if you want to give it a read for us.
Gotcha. So we're going to hit verses 6 through 12, and then we're going to touch on some later topics in like what he said in the latter part of it. So if you want to check out the intro, you can click up here. There's a little tab that you can click on. And so yeah, we'll go ahead and start off in chapter 1, verse 6. Talking about no other gospel. And if you don't know what the gospel is Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And it's the accounts of Jesus Christ. And it gets us going here. It's all kind of what we believe in. So, chapter 1, verse 6. I am astonished that you are so quickly deserting him who called you and the grace of Christ, and are turning to a different gospel. Not that there is another one, but there are some who trouble you and want to distort the gospel of Christ. But even if we or an angel from heaven should preach to you a gospel contrary to the one we preach to you, let him be accursed. As we have said before, so now I say again, if anyone is preaching to you a gospel contrary to the one you've received, let him be accursed. Verse 10, for am I now seeking the approval of man or of God? Or am I trying to please man? If I were still trying to please man, I would not be a servant of Christ. Verse 11, for I would have you know, brothers, that the gospel that was preached by me is not man's gospel. For I did not receive it from any man, nor was I taught it, but I received it through a revelation of Jesus Christ. Amen. So that's the first bit of that. Chris, why don't you go ahead
First couple of verses that we're hitting on. So really overall in this section, I really love how Paul is so clear in what he's saying, repeating himself and making sure that they know that there's only one gospel.
There's that emphasis.
Very, very good emphasis that he puts on there, just to make sure that his words aren't twisted. You know, it kind of reminds me of when Paul says, not that people can say that I was baptized by Paul or I was baptized by Cephas. So that they're not twisting Paul's words here so that he can be very clear. Hope I'm not repeating myself. But overall, the chapter just talks about how Jesus is the way. There is no other gospel. There is no other God. There is no other way of believing in Jesus. And we see that all throughout the New Testament, you know, talking about the new church or the one church, the whole church, undivided church. Yeah, that's kind of what I get out of it, is just making sure that we understand there's one.
Yeah, and I think when you look into the context of this passage, they're abandoning the gospel of grace.
Yeah.
Like I talked about in the intro. We cover some little geographic, but also some implications of the Judaizers.
The Judaizers.
You know, we know if you read through the Old Testament that they focused solely on the law, and they could not even keep the law. So they added a little bit of their traditions and a little bit of this, a little bit of that. And they followed the law, and they kind of lost the meaning behind what the law was for. And so they were abandoning the gospel of grace, which says, when I heard this quote, and I want to share this. It was by I think it's a Scottish preacher. And he said, there were people who asked on a bunch of street, and they said, if you were to die and you were to go to heaven, you know, why, how? And they would say, you know, I accepted Christ. And he said, they have it all wrong.
Yeah.
Because it's not I in that sentence, it's Christ saved me.
That's good.
You know, and so it's that gospel of grace that they're so quickly abandoning, because it's a tendency for us, you know, as believers to think that, oh man, I messed up.
If only I do more.
If only I do more,
right,
then Christ will love me again, or love me more than I have because of what I've done right now. You know,
right.
You know, maybe you said something that I shouldn't have said. So now I'm like focused on,
what can I say to retort that?
Reverse that. And
right.
Because I guess that's kind of how sometimes we work in our societies. You know, sometimes we have to earn our way back through trust and through like love. but Christ is unconditional love.
Yeah, it's
So
not,
we can't add to anything that he's already given.
it's not no trust is lost in buckets and
Yeah.
gained in drops. Christ, we're losing in buckets, but we're gaining back in buckets, right?
Yeah.
And so obviously we're never going to be perfect, and that's the whole gospel, and that's why Christ died for us. But I love how we talked about the Judaizers, because it's interesting how we can connect it to this whole message of the channel and how the religions of today work. Slowly over time, traditions get built and traditions get broken, and that's what makes us think that we're perfect, and that's what makes us think we're not perfect. But really, what God's saying is, like the channel is, one way
It's through Christ.
through Christ.
That's
not through our good works, so that no one may boast, right?
Yeah.
And so I think it's amazing to see what we're doing here, but also trying to reverse what society's doing in work-based faith.
And we say that like in a sense that you can be in a Catholic faith or in an Orthodox faith or in a Protestant faith and not believe in works-based salvation. But there definitely are some.
There's some hidden kind of
there are
motives there.
Yeah, and it's honestly a heart check, because the little things that you do in worship or the little things that you do in prayer time or
they're supposed to be yours with
right,
God.
Exactly, and
they're not the church's with God.
Right, exactly, and Christ is the head of the church.
Right.
So,
say your way of worship is wrong.
Right.
Unless,
as long as it lines with biblical values.
There's some boundaries in there, right?
Yeah, but it's like it almost sounds like a punch, but it's not, because like the Catholic brothers, the Catholic friends, the Catholic this, as long as you're loving Christ and
Jesus is the way. Do you accept Jesus or do you not accept Jesus?
Right.
And that's how you know.
Yeah.
Okay?
Do you think that you can add on to that? Then you're wrong.
I can't make that decision for you. Only God knows where you're going, and I don't.
Yeah.
But I love that you mentioned that. It reminds me of when Jesus is talking to the Pharisees or who he was talking to. I'm not too sure. That's some increasable knowledge on my behalf. But he talks about the washing of the hands before eating in this Jewish cultural tradition. And if you don't know, the Jewish people used to wash their hands right before they ate, or at least in the tribe that he's sitting with. And they're quick to tell him what to do and how to do it, instead of understanding those are man-made traditions and not things that are decided by God. God, obviously all things are through God, but God has one way through us, not to keep going in circles here.
Yeah, so does it have eternal value?
Yeah.
And that's the biggest question that
Right.
everybody has to answer for themselves. Is this eternally valuable? And, obviously it's outlined in Scripture, but, some things that we as believers can do, and like some Protestants can do, and some Catholics can do, and some Orthodox people can do, is they can start to cling to things because it makes them feel like they have that connection that helps them get on a better standing with God, when in reality it's just focusing on Christ because of what he's done for you.
Yep.
So yeah, that's kind of cool. And we get also to the duality of that aspect of the verse when it talks about if somebody else comes to you and they offer a different gospel. We have a Mormon church right down the street.
Right across the street, man. Right from Publix, okay?
Yeah, and we clock on them a lot because, they use the Bible, and yet they miss most every part of it, in my opinion. And I would happily debate them.
Any day of the week.
Yeah, any day of the week.
Hit up JT.
But it's sad because they have been so ingrained into that way of thinking. It's a different gospel.
Right.
Different doctrine. So, it gets down to the point of, what did Christ say? And if we add to that, what does that do to us?
And be careful who you're listening to.
Right. It even says to, test the prophets.
Test the prophet.
And I even wrote about it today. It's in First Kings, if you want to go check it
Look
out.
at that.
First
JT's on it.
Kings. That just happened to work out perfectly. Lord does miracles.
Lord does
But
miracles.
The prophet Micaiah, I believe, he was talking, and he's like, this is what's going to happen. If you don't believe me, when tomorrow comes to pass, and King Ahab, I believe, maybe not King Ahab, but it was another king. I just read about King Ahab. But anyway, but if that king dies in battle, you'll know I was right. So test the prophets. And it also says that in Deuteronomy too.
And Jeremiah says a similar thing as well. Actually, kind of cool how they all connect like that.
Yeah.
I love that though. That obviously we talked about there being one gospel, but don't stray away, and don't give false testimony, kind of as a commandment.
Mm-hmm. And then we get into verse 11 and 12. For I would have you know, brothers, that the gospel that I preach by me is not man's gospel. For I did not receive it from man, nor was I taught it, but I received it through a revelation of Jesus Christ. Paul's talking about not doing it for man.
Yeah.
If you're doing anything for man, it's in vain.
It's for the world.
Yeah.
Meaningless.
In the same
This
value, we talked about that first
Right.
section. If you're not doing it for Christ and for eternal value, it's in vanity. And if you, that's the whole point of the book of Ecclesiastes.
Yeah. Go read what Solomon has to say about that, man.
So I think it's really cool here to say that Paul's humbling himself and saying it's not by my own works, by my own doings that this is getting preached out, but because of Christ.
Awesome.
So
yeah,
I don't know if you have anything else to add, but I think that pretty much sums up Galatians 1.
Okay.
All right. So we'll see you guys next time. God bless you guys.
God bless you guys. Have a good rest of your day.